All right, grace and peace to the body that is the church. I want to thank everybody who is here. It means a lot to me. I know your time is important to you, so the very fact that you are here means a lot to me. The guest still has not shown up, so I will pause that. So I will talk for a few minutes, and hopefully he will show up, and we'll get the ball rolling. When he does show up, I will share the link in the comment section, and it'll be just for the guest. So today's discussion, as you can see, is between two opposing views. One being the Antiochus view, which will be my position, and one being the SDA view, which will be my guest position, and it'll be on Daniel chapter 8. And the reason why I choose this topic a lot is because when I'm talking with an Adventist, this is, I would say, the most or one of the most important places to go when talking with an Adventist. You know what? Actually, let me read my emails. Okay, so he emailed, and it might have been my fault. I can't remember if I told him just to come to the live. I'll tell him to come to the live, and I'll share the link in the comments. There we go. So he should be here in a few minutes. It looks like he says he is ready. Let me share. If you guys are having a good weekend, if you guys do have Saturday and Sunday off from your work, I pray your guys' families are doing good. The Lord is keeping you guys safe. Share that. So we will be, if he brings it up, I will be using the Apocrypha a little bit, because the Apocrypha on this very topic I think is important to read. But if you want to understand the details of Antiochus and how he fits them, I recommend reading not only 1st, 2nd Maccabees, but also read a historian named Polybius. I believe it's book 6 of his histories. Read Josephus, and various early church fathers like Clement of Alexandria talked about this. And actually, I think he held to a position similar to mine where the time was split, but I do believe he placed it during the time of the 1st century AD in Rome. And when it comes to Daniel 8, I'm pretty flexible, pretty open. I'm not dogmatic that my position is the position. The issue, the mainly the one issue that I am not flexible on, that I will not accept because I don't think it goes with the text. I think that the text rejects this position naturally, is that the 2300 are years. That is the one thing that I am not flexible on, and I cannot accept. I'm more than willing to accept that Daniel 8 is speaking of Rome in the 1st century, so speaking of the details that happen in Christ's life, like what is mentioned in Daniel chapter 9, verses 26 and 7 specifically. I don't hold to that, but I'm willing to. It's not a big deal if you hold to that position, in my view. I'm not going to debate you on it. Or even like a futurist position where you kind of hold to it, the Antiochus is more of like a shadow fulfillment, and like there's a future fulfillment of 3.5 years. I'm more open to that as well too. It's not really, because the time, although I don't think it handles the text as well, the time does allow for that, and it also I guess could be fit somewhat in the book of Revelation. I don't think he's shown up yet. So I did email him and told him to just come to the live, come into the chat, and I'll share the link. The reason why is because I don't do email on my computer. It's on my phone, and I don't have it'd be a lot of signing in for me to share the link through my email, which if need be, I will do that. So I think a number of you already know the SDA position on this, but one of the arguments is, and I don't know if my guests will present this, but one of the arguments is that the events that surround Antiochus do not fit the time exactly. And there is some truth to that in a sense, right? It doesn't go down as far as we know. And all we know is from the historical record. So it's not going to be precisely accurate down to the second, minute, hour, and the day. I don't think that's a big deal personally, but the SDAs make a big deal about that. But I would also argue that, as far as I know, I don't think their position is also super accurate, right? They're off by a month when it comes to the Day of Atonement in 1844. So they say it happened in October. It actually happened in September. But what if the decree in 457 or 458 actually happened months before the Day of Atonement? So in other words, it is actually not 2300, but due to the time that the decree is given, it's actually only like a month or 2 or 3 or 4 months short of 2300 years. I'm not sure if there's any information out there on that. I haven't looked into it. It's just an idea. So I don't think their position is going to be quite accurate. And so for them to argue that our position is not accurate down to the day is kind of like a straw man, because their position isn't accurate as well too. But I do think there is a position we can take that if we do hold to the 1150 days, that is, although we're not given a date, it's within that time where it seems to fit. And it's recorded here in First Maccabees. And I'm going to start, let's see. I'll just start here. It's not for any particular reason. And I'll just start reading as we wait for the guest. Let's see. Okay, there we go. He did email me back. Give me 1 second. Just come to my live. Right. My live video and comment in the live chat, and I'll share the link and you click it. There we go. Looks like he wasn't understanding. He wasn't understanding when I said come to the live in the past. So it'll be a few more minutes before he comes on. Grace, peace to you, Ryan. Good to see you. I'll definitely try. I've been super busy, and there are days where I'm not busy. I'm just not in the mood to talk. I just kind of get in these moods where I'm not sociable. But I'll give you a call soon. I'll try to. Hope you are doing well as well. All right. Let's see here. Start just verse 16. Oh, there you go. All right, Tori, grace, peace to you. Here, let me. I'll share the link in the chat. There is your link, Tori, and you're welcome to click on that. And I'll see you in backstage. Make sure you have a mic plugged in. It'll ask you about that. And then once you click it, then you'll be live, or I'll bring you to the stage, and then you'll be live, and we'll start chit chatting. Glad you can make it. Let me see here. Definitely do not enjoy reading the what is it, late Middle English that much. It's hard to read, but I don't have the RSV on my eSword yet. Let's see here. Go to ESV, and we'll go to yeah, Tori, you see that link I just shared? Go ahead and click that link in the chat, and that'll open up StreamYard, and then you'll I don't think you have to sign up. You can just like create your username. There you go. There you are. All right.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Wow, yes.
Awesome. Glad you made it.
There's a okay, um I'm feeding back into my like I'm hearing myself.
You may have a YouTube video going, maybe.
Let me see. Let me close out. Maybe I need to close out something. Oh, okay. Hold on. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now I'm good. Ooh, that took me a long time. I've never been on live anything before, so this was my first time.
Okay, it was probably partly my fault. I should have explained more to you how to do it. I kind of assumed you did, and I should
Oh,
have
no
done
worries.
that.
Yeah, I'm not really like a live guy. I'm just more of just a video, just create videos. But no, so this actually my very first time being live on anything. So this is definitely an experience.
Oh, awesome. Well, you're more than welcome to I don't know if StreamYard will let you right now, but you're more than welcome to restream on your channel, or you can repost it, or however you want to do it. It's up to you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't I won't know how to repost it, but yeah, maybe if I wanted to, I would just download it from your channel.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to.
All right, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. You want to
Well,
start with prayer? Oh, by the way, what is your name? I don't even know your name.
my name is Brandon.
Brandon. Okay, okay.
Yes,
My name is Tori.
nice to meet you, Tori.
Nice to meet you too.
And I
You
do
guys,
appreciate you coming on here and
yeah, no
doing
problem at
your
all.
thoughts.
You want to start with prayer?
Sure, if you don't mind opening a prayer, I
Sure.
appreciate that.
Most kind, gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your blessings, Lord. We thank you for Brandon and his ministry. And I pray that you continue to bless him, to lead him to the truth and to expound on your word as he's been doing. And I pray, Lord, for my ministry as well, Father. We both want to come to an understanding of your truth. And we just ask that you would continue to lead us and guide us. Bless my words, Lord, that I would say the things that you would have me to say. And I pray, Father, that you would forgive me of my sins that I've committed against you. And I pray, Lord, that you would bless this meeting. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I
Well,
think, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. No. Do you know how to share screens on here?
I've never done it before, but let me see. That's
So down on the bottom, you'll see like a little monitor picture with a plus sign in the middle of the
yes,
screen. Yeah,
yes.
that's where you go.
Okay, perfect.
So you're welcome to share a screen if you want to share something. And I
Okay,
figure
cool.
how we'll kind of do it. It'll be kind of like, just casual, but
Yeah,
you can kind of present your position. A lot of people in the chat will already know, but if you want to present like a nutshell position of your position
sure.
on Daniel 8, and then
Okay.
from there I can either give pushback or I can give
Mhm.
my position, and then we can kind of like through our discussion, the details will come out.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so in order to give my position, I want to sort of kind of tell you a little bit about myself, if that's okay. It won't be long; it'll be real short, but just why I've come to this conclusion. So
Yeah.
I've been an Adventist my whole life, so there's no big story there. There came a point in time about 2016-ish, somewhere in there, maybe a little bit early, but I started studying. I wanted to study like Daniel and Revelation for myself, not necessarily like what the church says or what the Ellen White says or what Uriah Smith says. I really wanted to know it for myself. So I started studying. And when I started studying the books of Daniel and Revelation, I came to a few conclusions that are atypical from the Adventist church. Okay. So now I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying. I believe all the I believe all the doctrines that Adventism teaches. Okay. So I'm talking about, the core doctrines. So I'm talking about the Sabbath, the sanctuary, state of the dead, all those things I do believe. However, when it comes to the intricacies of prophecy, I differ on a number of things in the book of Daniel. So I wanted to make sure that that is understood, so that it doesn't come across as confusing to you, because you might say, well, you guys teach X and I may not believe X. So I'm going to go into just real briefly And this will lead into Daniel chapter 8. Okay, so part of my studies started with the 7 heads and the 10 horns. Okay, now my view, and I won't get into the 7 heads, I'm just going to get into the 10 horns. My view of the 10 horns is atypical than what you're going to hear in an Adventist church. As a matter of fact, my view of the 10 horns, I don't think anybody holds this view. Maybe there's somebody out there. I don't want to say no one, but I've never heard anybody have this view. And this view leads into Daniel 8. So I'm going to quickly give you my view of the 10 horns. And I'm going to start because I believe Daniel chapter 7 and Daniel chapter 8 are really talking about the same thing. Outside of Babylon, it's the same exact thing. And I'm going to show you here. Let me see. Should I share my screen or can I talk to this?
If
I'm
you
trying
have
to.
maybe like a Bible app or something you want to use, you're welcome to
I
share
use Blue
that.
Letter Bible, so I'll open up Blue Letter Bible just so you can kind of see. I wasn't really. Let me go back to StreamYard here.
And I do know, like a year ago, I think I stumbled upon your videos and I saw you have a different view on the daily on chapter 8 as well too.
Yeah, I do have a different view on the daily as well. And we can discuss that as well. Share screen. Okay, so share screen.
Now, I did say at the very start when I opened up, like I'm pretty flexible with the book of Daniel. I do believe the Antiochus view is correct, but I don't have any flexibility when it comes to the time. Like I don't see it being 2,300 years at all. So that will be kind of like a focus point for me, just so a heads up, so you know.
Okay, sure, perfect. Perfect.
Oh, there we go. I see it.
Do you see anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me.
What is it? What do you see?
It's too small for me to see. Now I gotta add it to stage. There we go.
Okay, so is that? It looks like. Okay, so this is Blue Letter Bible. Okay, so I'm gonna go to Daniel chapter 7. Okay. Now in Daniel chapter 7, contrary to what Adventism and I'm gonna say traditional Adventism. Okay. Contrary to what you're going to hear in the traditional Adventism circles, I do not believe that the 10 horns represent 10 divisions of the Roman Empire. Okay. So, from my studies of looking at that, it is nearly impossible. There is no time. Maybe there was a few years that we could say Rome, Eastern Rome, or Western Rome was split into 10 divisions, but it's not enough time for us to call it the nation of 10 horns or 10 divisions or however you want to say it. Okay. So when I went back and I looked at the study, I looked at my own study, my own notes, and started praying about it, I came to the conclusion that the 10 horns represents the kings or kingships of the 7 governments that have ruled the known world from the time God called himself a people. So that would begin with the nation of Egypt, all the way to Assyria, all the way to Babylon, all the way to Medo-Persia, all the way to Greece, and then all the way to the 2 divisions of the Roman Empire. So that's your 7. That's how I view the 7 heads. Now, the 10 horns are going to be the 10 kingships that ruled those 7 divisions or those 7 governments. Okay. So, and the way that I get 10 out of that is obviously Egypt, Assyria, Babylon. They all have one king, one kingship. And when I say kingship, I mean that's a collective of all the kings that ruled those nations. And then when you get to Medo-Persia, I believe Medo-Persia is going to have 2 kings that ruled over it. And we can see this breakdown when you get to Daniel chapter 8 because it starts listing the horns separately. So once you get to Medo-Persia, you'll see it's 2 horns. So now it represents 2 separate kingships that are ruling this joint empire. And then when you get to Greece, you have Alexander the Great. And then you have the 4 divisions that came after Alexander the Great, which when you add them up, it represents 10 horns. Okay. Now, whether you agree or disagree with that, it's fine, but that's not part of the debate. I'm just telling you how I'm getting to a position here. Now, when you get to Daniel chapter 7 and you see the 10 horns, contrary to what traditional Adventism teaches, I believe that the little horn represents not only papal Rome, but I also believe the little horn represents pagan Rome. Okay. So I'm going to show you this where I believe, let me see here. I don't have any notes on this, so I'm just kind of going off the top of my head here. So please forgive me if it's a little bit convoluted. Let me see here.
You're good. Same thing for me. I'm just going off the top of my head.
Okay, cool. So it's laid back. So like you said, okay, cool. Okay, so let's go back. I'm trying to think here.
And if you could, I'd be interested on your view of Ellen G. White, because I know there's various views within the church.
Oh, sure. So my view of Ellen White is that she is a messenger of the Lord. I do not call her a prophet, even though I believe God gave her a prophetic gift. In other words, the things that she saw, if she went into vision, I believe the vision came from God. However, I typically would never call her a prophet. I believe that in the book of Revelation, when it talks about the spirit of prophecy, that is not Ellen White per se. That is just the gift of prophecy that was facilitated through a number of people that contributed to the Adventist church, including even William Miller. I would say some of the stuff that he brought to light. Josiah Litch, some of those things that he brought to light, I see it in totality as the spirit of prophecy, but I do not view Ellen White as the spirit of prophecy as is taught or as some people believe is in Revelation chapter 12. So I do believe that she had a gift, or she was gifted with prophecy. In other words, she was given visions, but she should never be called a prophet. And that's just my view on her.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So back to Daniel chapter 7. Where it brings out the little horn. It says in verse 8, I considered the horns, and behold, there came among them a little horn, before 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. Now, typically, you're going to hear in an Adventist church, you're going to hear that this represents the papacy taking out 3 horns in parts of the Roman Empire. I disagree with that notion. Okay. And I can get into that if anybody, but I don't think you agree with that either. So there's really no reason to go into that particular part. But now, here is where I see is actually happening here. The little horn, when Daniel chapter 7 transitions to this little horn, it is still the Imperial Roman Empire at that time. The transition is transitioning to simply the kingships of these nations, because it's about to make a point. Okay. And that point will be further examined when we get to Daniel chapter 8. But here in Daniel chapter 7, verse 8, where it says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before 3 were the first horns plucked up. Now, I believe this represents the rise of Imperial Rome into the Greek area. I'm trying to think of a word, the Greek territory. All right. So I think it was in probably maybe like the 130s, maybe the mid 2nd century BC, the Roman Empire arose up and they conquered the Macedonian Empire. Now, remember, the Greek Empire is divided into 4 nations. So that is, and obviously there's little smaller nations that have also taken up some of the territory, but the main kingdoms are the 4 kingdoms. So you got Seleucus in the let me go from the west. You got Cassander in the west, which was he ruled Macedonia. You have Lysimachus, who ruled the north, that is Asia Minor. You have Ptolemy who ruled the south, Egypt, and then you have Seleucus, who ruled the west. Okay. Now, what most people don't realize is that in 281 BC, Seleucus actually conquered the northern territory. He defeated Lysimachus. Okay, so there was a point in time that even though the Greek Empire started with four kingdoms, it really it really transitioned into three kingdoms, where Seleucus was ruling the east and the north. Cassander was still in the west. Actually, it began to transition because Cassander ended up being defeated, but another kingdom began to would take over from his kingdom. But it was still the north. I'm sorry, the west ruled by this other kingdom, or this other kingship. Let me say that, and then the south ruled by the Ptolemies, and then the Seleucid or the Seleucid Empire ruling the east and the north. And obviously the north started crumbling a little bit, but that was the division. So out of the four main ones, three of them would continue ruling. Okay, now when Rome rose onto the empire in about 130, I'm going to just guess here, 134, 133 BC, they rose and they conquered the Macedonian Empire. Now, when they rose and they conquered the Macedonian Empire, that was one of the horns that they took out. Then they went south to Egypt and conquered the Egyptian Empire. But I want to make sure you understand that when they conquered the Egyptian Empire, it wasn't initially by force. They literally were given the empire by their king. Okay, so they were controlling that empire, and we can tell that that's what happened, because when Antiochus came down there to attack the Egyptian Empire, who did we see push back on that fray? It was Rome. So Rome was technically already ruling the Egyptian Empire by the time Antiochus came to power. And then finally, in about 64, my dates are totally off because this is just totally off the top of my head. Around 64 BC, you would find that the Rome then consumed the rest of the Seleucid Empire, or what was left of it. And so in that manner, when Daniel 7:8 says, I consider the horns, and behold, there came up among them a little horn, before whom were the three of the first horns plucked up by the roots, he's talking about imperial Rome as it entered into the Greek Empire. And those three horns were actually the Macedonian horn, the Seleucid horn, and then the Ptolemaic horn in the south. Okay? Now, and please interrupt me at any point in time. That brings me to Daniel chapter 8. Because once I understood that concept, it then led me to understand that Daniel chapter 8 and Daniel chapter 7 are talking about the exact same thing. Okay? They're bringing out different points. Now, watch this. I'm going to go to Daniel chapter 8. It is the exact same thing. Notice now with verse number therefore the he go. Oh, here we go. Verse 8. Therefore the he goat waxed very great, talking about Alexander the Great. And when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven. What did we talk about? We talked about the four nations that were ruling the Greek Empire. So far, historically, we're accurate. It's the same exact thing, right? But what the text is not telling us is that Seleucus would conquer the northern empire. That's not written in the text here. It's just assumed, all right? And we can tell because in verse number 9, it says, and out of one of them came forth. Now, I know that those who hold the Antiochus view, they believe that them represents a horn, okay? And that's fine. But here, when you look at it from the winds of strife, then you can see that out of one of those winds of strife, which was in the Western hemisphere, because the winds of strife represents war. So out of one of those winds of strife, out of one of those winds of heaven that were blowing in the Western hemisphere, came out of that strife, a little horn. That was Rome taking out the Macedonian Empire and annexing it in 137, 138. My dates, it could be 160s. I can't remember the exact time, but somewhere in the 2nd century BC. When Just like what happened in Daniel chapter 7, when he came out of the west, what did he do? He went towards the south and conquered the Ptolemaic Egypt empire. Then he went towards the east, and then he conquered the Seleucid empire. It is the same exact thing. So my understanding of the little horn is that the little horn here in Daniel chapter 8, all the way until that pleasant land, all of this is the Imperial Roman Empire. It's not until you get to the pleasant land and then the rest of this that this transitions to the Papal Roman Empire. Questions?
No, I'm pretty good. I'm letting you lay out your position. But we'll get into disagreements probably from here onwards. So verse 9 to the rest of the chapter, we'll probably have disagreements.
Perfect.
But if you want to kind of just lay out your position here on what I call the activity of the little horn, so like the grown exceedingly great, the taking away of the regular burnt offering. You don't need to describe what that is.
Okay, so you want me to go through the whole? Okay, got you. I didn't know if you wanted to go point by point or you want. Okay, got you. So you want me to just lay out everything? Okay.
Yeah, so that way, then I'll disagree with it and I'll lay out why, and then you can go back.
Got it. Okay, so now here, this word, the pleasant land. Now, typically, traditional Adventism and evangelicals and Catholics, they all say this word pleasant land represents Jerusalem, right? So in the mindset, in how they view this text, they think that this is Jerusalem. Okay, I disagree with that. And the reason why I disagree with that, and you're going to discover that the translators in Daniel chapter 8 are supplying, and hopefully everyone on this call understands what supplying represents or what supplying means. And just in case somebody doesn't, whenever you see an italicized word in the in the King James Bible, that means that whoever was translating it actually added that word. Okay. Now, 99% of the time, I believe that the supplied words are good. They're necessary because the translation from the Hebrew to the English, sometimes it doesn't make sense. And you have to add these italicized words in order for it to make sense. It is clear to me that when the translators translated Daniel chapter 8, they wrote it with Antiochus in mind, and they wrote it and they supplied words to give the credence that this is Antioch. So not only did they supply words to help us with the English, they supplied words to help us see that this is Antiochus Epiphanes. And this is one of the things that I believe is why most good God-fearing Christians believe this is Antiochus Epiphanes, because the chapter deems, it forces you to believe that this is Antiochus Epiphanes. And the reason I know this is because they're starting to supply words that aren't just helping the text, they're actually framing how you should look at this. So, for example, pleasant land. There's no reason that the translator should supply the word land. The word in the original language is just the pleasant. Okay, it's not in the original language. Sorry, the word here, it should just be just the pleasant, right? But in the original language, the word for the pleasant is sebi or tabi. I forgot how do you actually say it, but I think it's sebi. Now, this word in the original language, when it has land or mountain behind it, it's always Jerusalem. But here, it was not supplied. It was not added, or it was not written by Daniel. So we know that Sabi is not Jerusalem because there is no land or mountain by itself. Now, the question is there anywhere else in the Bible, at least I haven't seen it, when land or mountain is not behind it, does it mean Jerusalem? I don't see anywhere. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but when I go through there and I see Sebi, but land or nation or whatever of all the lands, we know that that's talk. So for example, the glory of all the lands, right? We can tell that this is representing of Jerusalem. Look at this glorious holy mountain. So what am I saying here? Why and why do I bring that up? Because my view of this pleasant land is a transitional point here. This pleasant land for me is a transitional point where Imperial Rome was taken over or transitioned to a papal Roman Empire. And this pleasant land is representative of the papal church who began to usurp authority, when it came to the things of God. All right. The next verse actually confirms that this pleasant is part of it, because notice it says, and it waxed great even to the host of heaven. That is part of the pleasant, not the pleasant land. That is part of the pleasant. And that word in the original language can be taken for the prerogatives of God, that which is glorious. That's essentially what it means, that which is glorious. Well, after Imperial Rome conquered these nations, then the papacy rose up and began to wax great even to the host of heaven. Okay. Now, where it says it cast down some of the hosts and of the stars to the ground, I believe that the host is representative of, like, basically if you look at, I forgot the chapter, but if you look at somewhere in Genesis, you'll discover, and I think most evangelicals would agree with this, that Joseph, when he had his dream, he had the stars and the sun and the moon bow down to him. My understanding of that text is that the sun and the moon represented his parents, and the stars represented his brothers. Okay, so I see the star, the host represents the sun and the moon, and then the stars obviously represents the stars. But now, where does this come from? I believe if you go to Revelation chapter 13, I'm trying not to take too, I'm not gonna go there because I don't want to take too much of your time. Okay, so when you go to Revelation chapter 12, you'll see a woman who was clothed with the sun and the stars. I believe that the sun there represents the covenant, and then I believe the stars represents those who taught the covenant, right? If you go to Daniel chapter 12, I'm just going to go here real quickly here. I'm going to search for the word stars. Notice what it says here. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. So we understand that the stars here represents God's people who were being persecuted. And we see in Revelation chapter 12, there were 12 stars, represents the leadership of the church. Okay. So let me go back here. So when I see the host and the stars, not the host of heaven, but the host and the stars, I see here of basically an attack on God's word and those who taught God's word, right? Then it says, yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host. I believe that's Jesus Christ. And by him, the daily sacrifice was taken away and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Now, I believe the daily sacrifice, again, the translators are trying to force us to believe something. They're not doing this on purposely, like they're not doing it they're not trying to deceive us. They just really believe that this was Antiochus Epiphanes. But here you must understand that the sacrifice is an added word. Again, the word should just be tami, just the daily. Okay. Now, the way that you should interpret or translate that word, it should be the continuation. That's really what it's saying. Now, what is the continuation? Well, think about this. When the Jews, after the 70-week prophecy, I believe that the Jews lost their favorite status with the Lord. Not necessarily individual Jews, but I'm talking about as a nation. So today the church is really Jew and Gentile, but not just the Jewish nation all by itself. It's Jew and Gentile. Well, when the church jumped onto that, onto was grafted in, the church was a continuation of Israel. So here, when it says, yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, I believe that this is when there was persecution against those who dissented against the papal Roman Empire. Okay. So the Waldenses and different people that had to run to the hills, this was the taking away of that continuation. So the New Testament the New Testament church are really those that continued in the covenant. That's really what it means. And where it says the transgression of the reason for the transgression of desolation and cast down truth to the ground and practice and prospered, I believe this is the rise of the papacy, right? Or this is what the papacy did. So in place of the daily came the abomination of desolation. And I know there may be some Catholics online. I don't mean to be offensive to you. It's just the way that I read the Bible, and I understand how history has taught that truth. So it's not anything evil against, your neighborhood Catholic. I'm talking about systems here. Now, the question here, an angel comes and asks the questions. The way I understand this is that there's two angels, and Gabriel and Daniel are watching these two angels. And one angel asked a question, and he asked, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily and the transgression of desolation? Again, the word concerning does not belong in the text. The word sacrifice does not belong in the text. The way that most people think that's the question is being asked is, how long is the vision just about the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation? That's not what's being asked. The angel is asking, how long is the whole vision and the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, everything. Okay. And he says unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. All right. Now, this vision alone is more than 2,300 days if you start from the top. But obviously, I believe that the vision starts with Cyrus and the decree that Cyrus gave, but that decree was not finished until 457 BC, which was the Artaxerxes, part of the decree. And that's where you get the 2,300 days. So the whole vision itself is 2,300 days. So at that point, so basically that takes you to the cleansing of the sanctuary, in 1844. So I mean, I don't really know.
When you say it starts with Cyrus, what do you mean by that? I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, well, the vision itself begins with Cyrus, because Cyrus is he is the ram. So Cyrus would actually be the beginning of this vision, because you remember when Daniel started off the vision, he started off with the ram, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So Cyrus would be the beginning of this vision, or the rulership of Cyrus. And we can look at that also in correlation with Daniel chapter 11, when we see it says, there shall be three kings and the fourth shall be far richer than they all. That tells you that Cyrus was the one where it started off with. So Cyrus is the beginning of the vision. But when we look at Daniel chapter 8 and we see when the decree actually went forth, then we transition and we say, okay, the vision actually began with Artaxerxes, even though in all technicalities, the context of what Daniel saw began probably in, somewhere earlier than like probably the 300s. But in actuality, it would be from the decree of Artaxerxes. And that's how we come to the 2,300-day prophecy being done in the year 1844.
I see. Yeah. So essentially, you're saying that the vision itself starts with Cyrus, but the the 2,300 starts with the Artaxerxes.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Correct.
So essentially, you'd agree with the standard SDA position on that. Okay. So I'm gonna lay out a couple of issues that I see with the SDA position on this, and then if you want to maybe present a couple issues with my position, you're welcome to, or you can start interacting with what I present. It's up to you.
Perfect.
So there's a couple of things that we see in chapter 7 and 8 is what I call the transition argument.
Mhm.
And so whenever a new, what I call a beast system or a governmental, pagan type system represented as nations, whenever a new one comes on the scene, it's always represented as either like in chapter 2, a metal, or
Mhm.
as a beast in chapter 7. And we see in chapter 8, it repeats that same kind of pattern. It shows
Mhm.
Medo Persia as the ram, then it shows Greece as the goat. So it's showing that it's keeping that pattern.
Right.
And so if we are to see a transition from the goat into, or so from Greece into Rome, we would see another beast being presented, because we see that very thing happening in chapter 7 and chapter 2 as well too. So there's an issue there that I would see. And then also when it talks about the rising of the little horn, like in the explanation given by Gabriel, or what's called the Mare by Gabriel, you see that the little horn is still, it rises on those four kingdoms, and those four kingdoms still are a part of that one animal called the goat. So still during the time of the Greek Empire. So we know that the little horn is going to be part of that Greek Empire. It's just at the latter end of that Greek Empire. And then there's another issue that I see, and I can break this down in more detail.
Mhm.
That the 2300, you kind of touched on the word concerning, but I do believe that is appropriate to put in there. And I don't read, speak, translate Hebrew at all. I don't know anything about Hebrew, so I can't
I'm
speak.
the same as you.
Okay, so I can't speak on any of the rules
Mhm.
that they have to follow when they translate and why they supply. But even if you look at verse 13, there's a lot of words that are supplied. And more or less, I'm usually okay with words that are supplied. There might be issues every now and then, but I mean, if you see that word being supplied, the word concern, in like almost all of the translation, then it tells me that it's probably appropriate to do it. And I think the reason why is that this vision is actually focused on the activity of the little horn, which is why from um, verse 10 or verse 9 to verse 13, it's talking about nothing but the activity of the little horn. And then when we see in the explanation given right away in verse 15 to verse like 19, it talks about the little horn as well too, whether directly or indirectly. And then from verse 23, it picks back up on the little horn. So the main
Mhm.
focus is the activity of the little horn. And the reason why is because the little horn represents God's indignation on transgressors. And if you need me to, I can break that down as well too in the text. But those are two arguments that I present against the SD position that I'd be interested for you to interact with.
Mhm.
And like I said, if you want me to, I can break it down further for you in the
Okay,
text.
yeah, let's talk about your first point, which you mentioned the beast. You said that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said that whenever a new nation is introduced, it is introduced with I think you were trying to say like a symbol all on its own. Is that how I'm
Right.
understanding it?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Whether
yeah,
whether a
so
metal or an animal. Yeah.
okay. So let's I'm trying to think. I had like a slide, just one like a slide. I'm trying to think if it's appropriate for me to present this slide to answer this question or to address this question. Let me say that. I'm trying to think, would this slide lead to where I want to go with it? Um, I'm just gonna try. I don't know if this will work or if this makes sense, but I'm just gonna try it anyway. And um, let me see here. I'm just gonna do this. Okay. Can you see my screen still?
Yeah, let me add it to
Oh,
stage real
okay.
quick. Let me stop sharing mine and I'll add yours. Looks like it's still the Blue Letter Bible.
Oh, I okay. There's an app. Okay, I'm in PowerPoint now. So hold on one second. Let me. Um, okay, so let me go back and present. Let's see. Share screen. Window. Okay, so let me go back to that. Share. And then in a minute, I'm gonna try to bring that PowerPoint back up. Okay, what about now?
Let me add it to stage. Looks like it's still the blue letter Bible.
What? Hold on 1 second. Why is it doing that? Oh, let me do this. Let me do it one more time. Share screen. What if I... Oh, maybe I should... Oh, hold on. Oh, entire screen. That's what I need to do. Okay, got it. Okay. I'm sharing just... Okay, I got it. Okay, so entire screen. Hopefully, maybe this will work. Okay, so share. And now, if I'm sharing the entire screen and I go now, what about now?
Looks good.
Okay, good. Okay, so you are correct that whenever a new power is introduced, it's a new symbol. So let me start off with this. This is going to be something that probably nobody on the call has heard of before. This is something that I sort of have named myself. I call it the prophetic theme. Okay. And this is something that is shared between Daniel chapter 2, 7, 8, and 11. All right. Now, this will be a little bit confusing at first, but once you see it, then you'll catch on very quickly. In every vision, in every major vision in Daniel, so Daniel 2, 7, 8, and 11, you're going to notice that there is a prophetic theme. Okay. There is also a sub prophetic theme in every chapter that leads to the prophetic theme of the next vision. Sounds crazy, sounds ridiculous, sounds confusing now. You'll quickly see this. Okay, so Daniel chapter 2, we should be able to see that the prophetic theme is metals. Gold, silver, brass, iron, metals. That's the prophetic theme, okay? The prophetic theme represents how the vision is going to be, what's going to utilize to share this vision, to explain this vision. So in Daniel chapter 2, the metals represents that prophetic theme to express this vision. Okay. Now, there's a sub prophetic theme that Daniel mentions, but he doesn't know that he's doing this. Okay. He says, and wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beast of the field and the fowls of heaven hath given into thine hand. Okay. Now, I want you to look very closely at that beast of the field and fowls of heaven. That is the prophetic theme of the very next vision that he's going to see. So in Daniel chapter 7, he's going to see all three beasts are beasts of the fields or fowls of heaven, or they'll have wings like a fowl in heaven. Okay. So the prophetic theme now in Daniel chapter, that sub theme in Daniel chapter 2 becomes the actual prophetic theme in Daniel chapter 7. Now, watch this. When you continue this, you're going to see that there is a beast that is different from the other three powers. Okay. Now, what is different about this beast than the three beasts prior to it? The fact that it has horns. Right? The horns now become the horns are the sub theme of Daniel chapter 7. And then what happens in Daniel chapter 8? Every animal has horns because the horns becomes the prophetic theme of Daniel chapter 8. Not necessarily the animals themselves, even though we see two animals that accentuate this sanctuary concept, but the animals are not as important. It's the horns that are where the onus of the chapter lies. Now, in that same chapter, you're going to notice that there are cardinal directions. Each one came from the north, south, west, four winds of heaven. Everything is from a directional standpoint. And then that becomes our prophetic theme for Daniel chapter 11, where it focuses on a king of the north and a king on the south. Now, I've given you a little bit more than what's needed for this answer, but I wanted to bring out, first of all, that every time you come to the fourth kingdom, it is always different from the previous three. Okay. The previous three, now notice here you have the arms and chest of silver, but you'll notice that it doesn't talk about the fingers. It doesn't talk about, it doesn't talk about the wrist. It's just the arms and chest of silver, right? But once you come to the legs, there is a difference. It brings out more than anything else than these three metals prior to it. It's like toes and feet, and one is part of iron and part, like it's different from the whole thing. This one has iron. This one has clay. This has just regular metals, right? Same thing in Daniel chapter 7. Lion, bear, leopard, okay, beasts of the fields, fowls with wings. But notice none of them have horns. Now, the question would be, why would this one have a horn, but none of these have horns? Would it mean that the horns, if we're saying horns are kings, does it mean that they have no kings? Of course they have kings, but the horns are just not, the horn is not represented in Daniel chapter 7. The chapter is not about horns. So when you get to Daniel chapter 8, we can see that the vision is about horns. And again, once you get to that, what I call the fourth beast, or that power that's on the same row as these two powers here, we have something that's totally different than what we're seeing up top here. And so that's, in my estimation, that's why you have the little horn, even though it doesn't seem to have a beast. I believe that little horn still represents the same power that these powers down here represent. Does that make a little sense?
Yeah. So I do see issues with that, and I'm okay with this prophetic theme type of thing. It's not
Okay.
a huge issue with me. Now, if you see the image on, I think chapter 7, the reason why the horns are there and that ferocious beast is mentioned is because that vision is focused not on the first three beasts, but it's focused on the fourth beast. So it gives it like extra characteristics. You see this kind of like in movies, or like more like in cartoons. Like the main characters are, they're drawn more spectacular, so the focus is more on them. There's details around them, but they're the main focus. I think that's happening here in chapter 7 with the fourth beast and all the horns.
Right.
And
But could it do that, but still giving the other ones horns?
it could give him like ribs in his mouth, which I guess type of horn. But I mean, yeah, I don't see why it has to. But like I said, I'm okay with it. Like what you just pointed out, it's not a concern. But if you notice, the horns are on the beast in the image on chapter 7.
Right.
In chapter 8, I think for it to be accurate, the little horn needs to be on the goat, that's underneath the goat. And I'll lay that out for you if you want.
Yeah, please.
I'm gonna have to share my screen real quick so that way
Go ahead.
audience can.
And sorry for taking up so much time. I know my answers are kind of long-winded. So I'm sorry about that.
No, you're good. I want to see some interaction with my argument, so I appreciate it. All right. So in chapter 8 here, we see then the goat represents Greece. We'll see that here in a minute. Then the goat became exceedingly great, but when he was strong, the great horn was broken. So there's a horn on his head that represents Alexander the Great. And instead of it, there came up 4 conspicuous horns towards the 4 winds of heaven. So these 4 horns are on the goat still, just like in the horns on the great ferocious beast in chapter 7. They're still on that beast. And I'll explain why it doesn't really matter if we say that the little horn comes from the four winds or the four horns. It's really a moot point. It's like a distinction without a difference is what it is. What we see here in chapter 9, out of one of them, a little horn. So this little horn is still on the the third beast, excuse me, that is Greece, which is represented as the goat. And we see that here more broken down in the explanation given by Gabriel. It says, and the goat is the king of Greece, and the great horn between his eyes is the first king. As for the horn that was broken, in place of which, so it's in place of, so it's still on the goat.
Right.
In place of which 4 others arose. 4 kingdoms shall arise from his nation, but not with his power. And at the latter end of their kingdom, so their kingdom refers to the 4 kingdoms that they just mentioned in verse 22. When the transgressors have reached their limit, a king of bold face, one who understands riddles, shall arise. So that king of bold face is that little horn that's mentioned in verse 9 and 10, 11. We see that, not the little horn part, but we see this here as well in chapter 11, verse 4. It says, well, verse 3, I'll start. It says, then a mighty king shall arise. Speaking about the great horn on the goat in chapter 8. Then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion and do as he wills. And as soon as he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken and divided toward the 4 winds of heaven. So that we see the 4 horns are divided towards the 4 winds of heaven. So that's why I say it's really, a distinction without a difference, because his 4 horns are in those 4 winds of heaven. So if you pick one of the 4 horns or 4 winds, you're picking one of the 4 horns as well too. So they kind of go together. It says, but not to his posterity, nor according to the authority with which he ruled. Speaking about it, they're not as mighty as he was. For his kingdom shall be plucked up and go to others besides these. So that is why I would say the little horn is still on the third beast, that is the goat, and we see no other thing or place that he grows out of, because little horns are never a separate kingdom from the present beast. They're on top of the present beast kingdom.
Well, all right, a few things. Okay, so the first thing that I notice is that the language for the rising of the little horn is not the same as the other 4 horns. So the other 4 horns, it says in place of them. But when it comes to the little horn, it just says a mighty king shall rise up. Now, to me, that language is not, it doesn't express, and now it could be that but that language alone, if I were just Joe Schmo out of street and I've never read the Bible before, I would never jump to the conclusion and be like, oh yeah, this king rose up out of the nation. It just says
what verse are you talking about? Sorry.
Where it says a mighty king. Where was that?
Oh, in the explanation?
In the explanation part of it, yeah.
Verse 23. At the latter end of their kingdom.
Yes.
King of bold face or mighty king. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So I'm talking about the explanation part of it. That part doesn't, I don't know if there's an either or that would lead somebody to go with either one of our views. It just says in the latter end, a king of bold face who understands riddles shall arise. So he just rises up. He comes to rulership. It could be he comes to rulership in Greece, or it could be he comes to rulership in Rome, or comes to rulership ruling over Greece. Okay, but either way, just a mighty king stood up. So that language down there doesn't really, I don't think it moves the thermometer either way, if that makes sense. But let's go back up to the other part. So the actual vision part of it. And let's talk a little bit about that. Okay. So the first thing that I would say is,
do you want me to share your screen?
No, I'll let you drive. Right. Yeah. So the first thing that I would say is that there is no principle in the Bible that would prohibit a horn from being attached to a beast. Okay. And the reason I say that is because go with me to Zechariah 1. Zechariah chapter 1. And go down to verse 18. It says, "And I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, 4 horns. And I said to the angel who talked with me, what are these? And he said to me, these are the horns that have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem." And then verse 20 says, "The Lord showed me 4 craftsmen." Scroll up a little bit for me. I can't see down. Yeah, there you go. A little bit more. No, like, I'm sorry. Scroll down then. Scroll down. Okay. Oh, that is the bottom. Okay, my taskbar is just covering it up. It's just how my screen is. So basically, I'm not going to read verse 21 because I can't see it. But basically, here we have an understanding that a prophecy that has horns in it doesn't necessarily have to have a beast on it, just on the onset of it on its own. Now, I know what you're talking about is you're looking at the system, the flow of the chapter. Every other beast has a horn, so why wouldn't the little horn have a beast, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I have no issue with horns being representative of kingdoms without being on a beast,
Okay,
but I think
perfect,
in
perfect.
the
Okay,
Bible in general. But I
okay.
think I'm not really strict with rules, right? I think the context will lay out a lot of rules for us. And I
Hmm.
think here in the book of Daniel, the context of the book of Daniel, it is without exception that a horn
Hmm.
is on a beast,
Right.
so
Okay.
part
Yeah.
of that kingdom.
Right. 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 Okay, yeah, and so yeah, and I would say that's probably maybe one of the best arguments for the little horn being Antiochus Epiphanes or part of the Greek Empire. But I think that when you look at the totality of the chapter and the other components of the little horn, it's, in my opinion, it's almost impossible to put it under Antiochus Epiphanes. But let me give you another viewpoint of these three. I'm sorry, of the fact that there is no beast here in Daniel chapter 8. I think I went into this on one of my videos. So um when you think about it, as a matter of fact, go to Revelation chapter 13. Revelation chapter 13. And I want you to look at verse number 2, verse number 2. Okay. It says, "And the beast that I saw was like unto a leopard. Its feet were as the feet like a bear's, and its mouth was a lion's mouth." I'm sorry, I'm used to the King James version, so in my mind, I'm saying it as the King James, but
Do you
and
want
it's
me to?
okay. I don't mind this version, but it's that's why I keep getting.
I can
Yeah,
pull up
you
the
can go ahead. You can
KJV if
switch.
you
Yeah,
want.
you can switch. Yeah, it's fine.
There we go.
It doesn't really matter, but it's just when I'm reading it, I'm thinking King James.
Yeah.
And the dragon gave his power, seat, and great authority. Now, when you look at this verse here, who do you believe? Because I want to make sure that we're on the same page. Who do you believe that this beast is?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
don't
That's
have a
fine.
position on it.
Okay, so my position is that this is the Roman Empire. Okay. Um, Now I believe that this goes back to what Daniel saw when he saw the lion, the bear, and the leopard. Um, and this is the reason why John the Revelator couldn't give it. I'm sorry. This is why Daniel couldn't give it a description of like an animal, because it was a mixture of the previous 3 animals. But notice here that Rome doesn't have its own beast. Look closely at it. The beast itself was a composite of the 3 previous beasts. In other words, it wasn't like John saw a beast that was Rome, and then Rome had 3 components that looked like the other components. The whole beast was representative of the other 3. So in other words, Rome, now I'm talking about prophetically, not literally, not geographically, obviously. Prophetically, Rome doesn't have its own beast. Rome is the lion, the bear, and the leopard. The Bible says that it looked like a leopard. So everything on that beast looked just like Greece. The way that it walked was just like Medo-Persia. And the way that it consumed or spoke was just like Babylon. Nothing else on this beast was Rome. In other words, Rome is the lion, the bear, and the leopard. Now, if we take that concept and we apply it back to Daniel chapter 8, Daniel chapter 8, Rome is the Persian Empire. Rome is the Greek Empire. That is how prophetically Rome, that's how prophetically Rome looks. Not geographically, not literally, but prophetically, the little horn doesn't have to have a beast, because in actuality, it is all the beasts combined together. Thoughts?
Yeah. Um, so you a quick clarifying question. So you'd say Rome did not add anything. It just took from the other beasts. It
I'm
didn't
saying
add its own.
prophetically, not literally. I'm saying prophetically.
What I mean is, like in chapter 7, it is its own beast.
Yeah,
And
in chapter.
even if it has parts of the other kingdoms, so it looks like it's part bear, part leopard, part lion, there's still part of it that is separate from and different from those other three, which makes it like a terrifying, ferocious beast. Would you agree with that, or would you disagree with
No,
that?
I disagree with that. And the reason I'm saying that is because John and Daniel aren't disagreeing with each other. John is giving us a little bit, because John is recognizing what he's actually seeing, or he's giving a description of what he's actually seeing. Daniel is like, I don't know what it was. It just had iron. Like he's giving you details of the beast, but the description, he doesn't have a description, right? John is giving us the description of the beast. And he's saying that beast wasn't its own beast. That beast was a mixture of all the three previous beasts behind it. And that's why the beast in Daniel chapter 7 was the only beast with 10 horns, because spiritually, God sees Rome as a combination of all the kings who ruled the world prior to it. Rome is an amalgamation of everything, of Assyria, of Egypt, of Babylon, of Greece, of Rome. It's everything. That's why it has 10 horns. That's why at the end of Daniel chapter 2, and you see the 10 toes that are destroyed, that's part of Rome. It's an amalgamation of everything. So when we see John the Revelator giving us the actual description of the beast, we can see that every part of the beast in Revelation chapter 13 was Greece, Persia, and Babylon.
Yeah, so here, like in chapter 7, verse 7 of Daniel, it says, "After this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a fourth beast." So even if it is not its own beast and it's comprised of parts of other beasts, it's still a unique beast because it has consumed parts of the other beasts. So it's not completely the lion, it's not completely the leopard, or not completely the bear. It's its own fourth beast. And so even if that is 100% true, which is fine, um,
But I
it still
understand
has to
that.
be.
But I understand that concept. Sorry to cut you off. I understand that concept. But what I'm saying is that that fourth beast that is a beast by itself, it's still Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece, even if it's its own separate beast, because Rome doesn't is not the beast is not its own territory. In other words, when the Bible says Rome, it's not talking about Italy. It's not talking about just a little country in Italy. When it says Rome, it's talking about the whole world, right? So even though so think about it like this: when Egypt ruled the world and Assyria came and conquered Egypt, Assyria basically consumed Egypt. So now Assyria was its original territory, and it was Egypt combined together, right? So when Rome came in Revelation chapter 13 and consumed the world, it's consuming the territories that previously existed. It's not like it's Rome is just in Italy. Rome is Greece, it is Persia, it is Egypt, it is all of those together. So that's why when John the Revelator saw the beast in Revelation chapter 13, it was only those powers. Now, had it said, this is the beast and only these parts look like certain parts, like had it said the tail looked like a leopard, the mouth looked like a, but it said the whole beast looked like Greece. Thoughts?
Yeah, I would slightly, excuse me, disagree, but I'm not really, super concerned about it because we see whatever you want to call that fourth beast, whether it's Rome or not Rome, or its amalgamation that makes Rome, it's still a beast represented as the fourth beast, and those horns are on that fourth beast. So,
Right.
however you want it, and beyond that, I mean, I won't say too much more. I think in my mind, it's pretty obvious that
Okay.
the horns will always be on a beast, whether it's amalgamation of the previous beast or if it's its own beast. Doesn't really
Okay, that's
matter
fine.
too much
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah, and we can I mean, obviously, nobody's being converted on this. I mean, this is something that we'll both have to take away and maybe watch the video and pray on it and different
Yeah.
things like that. But yeah, but I'm just trying to help you see where my position is coming from, that the little horn in Daniel chapter 8, when we look at the principle, and you agree with this principle that it doesn't have to have a beast, you're just saying when we look at the flow of the chapter that it should have a beast. And I don't have a problem with that, because I'm more of a systems interpreter of scripture. I like systems. I like, formats and different things like that. So I see the format of that. However, the point that I brought out is every time it gets to the fourth nation, there is something unique about this kingdom outside of all the other nations. And that is how, and so I'm linking that together. So remember, I spoke about the feet, the toes is different from all the other metals. This one was mixed with clay, mixed with clay. When we talk about the fourth beast in Daniel chapter 7, this one had horns. None of the other ones had horns. When we get to the beast in or the horns in Daniel chapter 8, the little horn was a horn all by itself. So when I'm looking at these intricacies of differences, I'm seeing that the little horn follows that same path. And then when we coordinate that, or when we correlate it with Revelation chapter 13, where the beast doesn't have its own beast, where Rome is actually part of Greece, part of Persia, part of Babylon, then it makes sense that the little horn in Daniel chapter 8 is the ram. It is the goat, but it's just the little horn coming upon those nations to conquer them. It's because remember, in Daniel chapter 7, you see the rise of kingships. The
I
prophetic theme determines that now in Daniel chapter 8, the focus is just on the kings, not necessarily the beasts, but the actual kingships themselves. And so when I toggle those three together, I don't see uh, you know, I, I don't see a bad interpretation of prophecy, even though I could understand why somebody may look at that and be like, well, it has to have a beast. On the
Yeah.
onset, yeah, I definitely
So
would agree that it has to have a beast, but I'm just looking at it from that standpoint. Sorry to cut you off.
yeah. So no, you're good. No worries. So systems, I understand why systems are very appealing. They are very appealing, right? Because in our
Mhm.
minds, we want to systematize everything.
Yes.
What I found over the years, though, is that systems tend to have issues with them because they're made by fallible men, and
Mhm.
fallible men will probably focus on certain points that they prefer over others. And we see this not only
Yep.
with like prophetic systems, like
Mhm.
the SDA system or the dispensational system, or
Mhm.
what have you. We also see them with whole theological systems, whether it be like Arminian, Calvinistic,
Mhm.
or whatever, Baptist, whatever. There's always going to be issues with that system, and so I always
Okay.
say, have caution when you go about interpreting things through your system, because there
Mhm.
may be a chapter that puts a kink in your system and doesn't really quite fit, and you don't want to then force that chapter or that verse into your system so your system still stays nice and neat. And instead, what you want to do is like maybe rearrange or fix your system if there is a verse or chapter that does not fit. Now, what I will point out real quick, that I kind of thought about as you were talking is, notice here in the interpretation of by Gabriel, and that's what we should be going off of ultimately to
Mhm.
understand,
Yeah.
the vision. He tells us who these beasts are. So he says the ram is Medo Persia. So we know for a fact that represents Medo Persia,
Mhm.
and we know for a fact the next beast represents Greece. But
Mhm.
never when it comes to the little horn does he say it represents Rome or the fourth beast of chapter 7. However, you want to say that needs to be worded. Rather, what he says is a king who understands riddles, a fierce king arises on their kingdom. Their kingdom refers to the four horns. And so that is why I still stick with, at least for now, when it comes to Revelation, right? Like I just described, I'm kind of cautious about systems. And so,
Mhm.
uh, if you don't accept the whole system when it comes to eschatology, you're going to have issues with understanding the book of Revelation. Not meaning like interpretive issues, but you have to then walk through every verse and every word of the book of Revelation to try to
Mhm.
understand it on your own, and that is exhausting in itself. So it takes time. And so,
Gotcha.
when it comes to the beast, it could be Rome. I'm not, opposed to that view. I
Mhm.
don't hold to that view right now, so I can't really speak too much on the beast chapter 13. You may be correct, maybe I don't know. But here in chapter 8, I think it's pretty clear that there is no fourth beast that arises or is mentioned at all. There's silence in the chapter
Mhm.
on the fourth beast here in chapter
Okay.
8. But
Okay.
there is one more argument. I'll let you like kind of close your thoughts on that, and then there's one more argument I'll present to you
Okay. Sure.
against your view, and you can talk about that if you want.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to say anything in retort to it. If not, then I'll.
Oh, no, I think I think actually what you said was fair and balanced. I think that we do have to be careful with systems, and so that's actually what I attempt to do is come up with systems. But if I find a kink in that system, well, then I need to either adjust it, or that system doesn't exist, or it doesn't exist, the way I thought it did. So yeah, I don't really have much to say on that, but yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Awesome, cool. And I don't know how much time you have left. I have limited time, so
The only let's go to 6 o'clock. Let's do that. I was gonna try to keep it down to an hour and a half. But I had an elders meeting, but
yeah.
it's not that big of a deal. So I'll just go to 6 o'clock. And if I do get in trouble, I'm just gonna say, hey, there's this guy named Brandon that
Yeah,
that.
blame it on me. I like it. I like it. I start
All
getting
right,
phone
go
calls
ahead,
pretty
Brandon. Go
quick.
ahead, man. Go ahead.
um, let's see. Okay, so the next argument is going to be focused on the 2300 being days and not years.
Sure.
And actually, I would hold to the half. I'd hold to 1150, so the half of 2300. I'm sure you hearing that, you know why.
Of
Um,
course.
So I think the focus of this vision is on the activity of the little horn. I'm going to break that down, and I think the 2300 lays out the time that the little horn is active. And so in verse 9, we see out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, towards the east, and towards the glorious land. It grew great even to the host of heaven, and some of the host and some of the stars it threw down to the ground and trampled on them. So already we see a activity happening after the little horn has arisen.
Mhm.
So he's trampling the host and the stars. So the little horn becomes great, even as great as the prince of the host. And so, do you hold to the position that that is Christ?
I do.
Okay, yeah. So I would agree with that. And so he's trying to become like God or a God
Now
or
let
God.
me can I stop you there?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. If this is Antiochus Epiphanes, how does he wax great to the prince of the host?
I'll explain that. It'll be
Okay.
explained as I walk through verses
Okay.
11, 12, and 13.
Got it. Got it. Got it.
So he becomes great, even as great as the prince of the host, and I believe that right there explains the growing exceedingly great for him. Because what's greater than growing towards God Himself?
Hmm.
Nothing is really greater than that. And the regular burnt offering. So this is what is from here on out is what's going to describe how he's growing, even as great as the prince of the host. The regular burnt offering which I would take as the daily. So when it
Mhm.
says the tamid, it says ha tamid. So it's not any continual or any part of the continual services or anything. It is the continual. And I think you'll see that various dictionaries, lexicons will point out that one, it's that phrase ha tamid without a modifier is unique in the book of Daniel. Kind of like how certain things are unique in the book of Daniel because it's a prophetic book.
Yeah, yeah.
Ha-Tamid by itself, they all, not all, I can't say all because I haven't read all, but the ones I have read say that the Ha-Tamid refers to the daily, the evening and morning sacrifice, or the morning and evening sacrifice. And I think that's important to point out here, and I'll explain more here in a
Okay.
second why. But so the regular burnt offering was taken away from him. So the question is, who is him? I would say the him is whoever this prince of the host is. So this regular burnt offering was taken away from the prince of the host. Why that's important is if you look at the daily, why was the daily sacrifice given? As far as I understand it wasn't for sins or for forgiveness or cleansing or anything. It was for Yahweh's pleasure. He commanded it, and it was for his pleasure. It was a pleasing aroma, and that was it. I'm not sure of any other reason why it is performed.
I always thought it was actually for sin.
The morning and evening, I don't think so, but I could be corrected on that.
Okay.
And later on, if you want to, share something and correct me on that, I'm open to
We
the
can
correct.
actually come back to that on another study. I don't wanna interrupt the study here because that would take me having to actually do a little research, and I don't think we have time. But go ahead.
Yeah. So assuming I'm correct on that,
Mhm.
this daily, which was a daily sacrifice, was taken away from him, and it was a pleasing aroma to him. And so that is one way how the little horn is trying to become as great as the Prince of Hosts, because and we read this in First, Second Maccabees, he's going to replace all of these things that he's taking. So all of these offerings, sacrifices, all these what would be called cultic performances and duties are being replaced by the little horn from those that are done by the Israelites to the pagans. And it says, in the place of his sanctuary was overthrown. And that is how it is overthrown, is through the defilement by these pagans.
Mhm.
And a host will be given over to it. So this host, I would say, are the Israelites. And it says, the host will be given over to it. It refers to the little horn. So there is somebody giving this host over to the little horn. Now, why would this person, I would say, is God,
Mhm.
given over his people to this little horn? Well, we find out here in a second that it's because of their transgressions,
Mhm.
not just like once or twice, but it's a continual transgressions that were not repented of, and they refuse to turn from them.
Mhm.
And so it says, the host will be given over to it together with the daily or the regular burnt offering because of transgression. So there's the reason why, because of transgression, these are given over to the little horn. And the little horn will throw truth to the ground, and it will act on process. That's probably referring to uh, the law and the scriptures and the truth of the sanctuary and all that kind of stuff together.
Mhm.
Um, so right there, that describes the activity of the little horn, what the little horn does when he arises and why he arises. Then in verse 13, it says, then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one who spoke, for how long is the vision concerning? Now you point out that that word is not there, but I do think it's appropriate because of what was just described right there, that the main focus of this vision is the little horn. The most attention that is focused on this vision is on the little horn and what it does because of transgressors that have reached their full, which we'll see here in the explanation of the vision. So how long is the vision? So even if you take the concerning out, it says, how long is the vision, the regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? So they're all lumped in together. And so this time, we have to cover all of that together, not like in separate sections. And so, and then also make note as well, too, it says there's a question, for how long? That's the question. The answer is given in verse 14. And he said to me, for, so another answering that question, for how long? For 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be restored to its rightful state. So in other words, for 2300 evenings and mornings, the sanctuary will be made desolate. So however long that 2300 is, the sanctuary has to be desolate for that whole time because it is connected directly with the activity of the little horn by these right here. But to bring that out even more, we see here in verse 15, when I, Daniel, had seen the vision, I sought to understand it. So he wanted to understand what was going on because, I mean, we're talking about, rams, goats, horns, and then a horn trampling on. If you see that imagery in the vision, you're going to be thinking, what the heck's going on? This horn
Exactly.
on stars and hosts,
Right.
it sounds weird. So I sought to understand it, and behold, there stood before me one having the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Uli, and it called Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. So Gabriel has come here to give understanding that he saw.
Mhm.
So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was frightened and fell on my face. But he said to me, understand. So here's some understanding. Understand, O son of man, which that's an interesting phrase right there in itself.
Mhm.
Understand, O son of man, that the vision is for, so this vision that you talked about is for the time of the end. That's another clue we have. So this activity here is for the time of the end. And when he had spoken to me, I fell into a deep sleep with my face to the ground, but he touched me and made me stand up. He said, behold, so here's more understanding. I will make known to you what shall be at the latter end of the indignation. So there's another. What is indignation? It is God's wrath being poured out upon transgressors.
Mhm.
However, that is manifest in whatever book and chapter we read. So that is, generally speaking, God's indignation. Now, why would we be speaking about God's indignation here? Is because there are transgressors that were spoken of in chapter 12, where a little horn tramples upon them and takes away the burnt offering because they're transgressors and they've been transgressing. And we see that in chapter 11, which I won't bring up right now, but it says, behold, I will make known to you what shall be at the latter end of the indignation. For, now notice this indignation here, it refers to, now the refer is not in there, but it still is appropriate to put there because this appointed time of the end is about this right here. So it says, behold, I will make known to you what shall be at the latter end of the indignation, for it refers to the appointed time of the end. And then he gets into the explanation of what these creatures are, but they just like in chapter 7, he glosses over the first three beasts, just saying this is who it is, or this is the beast. There's like one verse and that's it. Same thing here. He goes over Medo Persia, one verse, and then he goes to the goat, which is the focus of the chapter. That's why it gets the most explanation. And the goat, or we already read that, excuse me. Now notice here, at the latter end of their kingdom, so that is referring to the four horns kingdom at the latter end of their kingdom. So it's still their kingdom. That's what the word there refers to. Their kingdom, the kings of the Greece, the four kings of Greece. When, so this is the time when the transgressors have reached their limit. So there is a limit point to how many transgressions these transgressors can commit before the indignation is to be poured out through the means of the little horn. And we see this with like Babylon as well too. Similar languages expressed about Babylon, right?
Right.
Israel was made desolate because of their transgressions, and it is done and expressed through uh, God's servant, King Nebuchadnezzar. At the latter end of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their limit, a king of bold face, one who understands riddles, shall arise. So this king arises because the transgressors have reached their limit. And so we see that linking it up with verse 12, where it says, and a host will be given over to the little horn together with the regular burnt offering because of transgression. So you see how the link is there.
Mhm.
So so the vision ends with the activity of the little horn, and then the explanation of the vision by Gabriel starts with the activity of the little horn. So that's the focus of it, and that is why I would say the 2300 has to be days, because it is linked directly with the activity of the little horn, which, I mean, cannot be years. And that just, it can't be 2300 years where the sanctuary is made desolate and the people are being trampled and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the explanation.
Got it.
Are
Okay.
you?
All right, perfect. So my thoughts on that is back to the question, how long? When you take out the word concerning, it doesn't, from my standpoint, from my just looking at the word, it's the verse itself, that would not, think about it from this standpoint. And I gave this example. Did I do it in my video? I'm not sure. Anyway, but imagine you took your car to the mechanic and you had a list of things that needed to be fixed on the car, and the mechanic calls you back and says, you know, um, you need tires, you need brakes, you need rotors, your fan belt's going bad. Here's a list of all the things that you need done. And then you reply to him and says, well, how much is the the total, or how much is the price concerning the tires and the rotors? Well, the mechanic at that point, he that word concerning modifies the whole context of the verse. So what he's going to do, he's not going to give you the price of the belt and the other stuff. He's only going to give you the price of the brakes and the rotors, right? So when we take out that word concerning, then it encompasses the whole vision, right? So the beginning of the vision of Daniel, that word is kazon, right? So when he asks how long is the vision, it goes back to that word, the hadzon, because it's the whole vision. So if we take out the word concerning, I'm not sure you would get just the vision of the regular burnt offering, um, the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot. I don't think that you would get that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't have my Bible on me that has my notes concerning the talk about I wrote them down, but the talk about the Kazon and the Mare.
Mhm.
I think it's a little not great of an argument. It kind of there's issues with it, and I might have to do a whole video explaining that because there's a lot of
Well, hold
details
on.
there.
I'm sorry, Brandon. Hold on. I'm not okay. So I'm glad you brought that up. I don't have the position of traditional Adventism where the Mare and the Kadzon are somehow words for, like, the Mare is a word for the 2300-day prophecy. I don't believe in that. I believe that the Mare. So here's my understanding of the Mare and the Kadzon, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. The Kadzon is the whole vision, regardless of whatever you say. It's the vision. It's everything that Daniel saw, including the little horns activities. All of that is the Kadzon. The Mare is how Daniel should interpret that, should see it. Okay, so think of it like this: if I were to tell you, um, let's just say I told you something from the Bible, and you said, "I see what you're saying." That's the mare. You are seeing it, but you're not literally seeing it. You're seeing it with an understanding. That's the mare. That's my understanding of the mare. So when Daniel talks about the Kadzon and the mare, it's simply they could both refer to the same vision, but one, the mare, is just like, how do you understand it? How are you interpreting it? Do you see what God is trying to show you? That's the mare. So I don't agree with the separation. I don't think it leads anywhere. I think the Mare and the Hadzon basically are two separate words, to describe how we should see this chapter, or see the vision that Daniel saw. So one, Hadzon vision, Mare is your perception of that vision.
Yeah. So okay, cool. So reason why I think concerning would be an appropriate addition right there, and I think if you compare, it's there in like most. Is my screen share? Yeah, my screen share.
Yep,
Cool.
I see it.
Um, I was just, as I was talking, I was thinking, why not just compare them and see um how many translations, which I only have so many on here right now, but how many have concerning?
I think
Um,
I'm pretty sure like 90% of them. I've looked this up already,
yeah.
and 90% of them. But the reason why I think that is, Brandon, is because almost everybody believes this is Antiochus Epiphanes.
I mean, it's hard to prove someone's presupposition when they're translating because it might be um some or even most, maybe it was, but I don't know. I'm not sure if that would be a reason why. That it would be really hard to prove that that's a reason why, because I mean it is possible, and there were people in like the early church like Clement of Alexandria who did hold to this vision referring to Rome, but it was still limited to the activity of the little horn. It was just during like what Daniel 9:25-7 talks about. And
Yeah, I mean,
so, and
I
you
mean, you have
could,
a point, but if you look at just even if you just look at the commentaries, you know, if the comment if you use the commentaries as just a barometer of what the translators thought, that really tells you everything you need to know. Almost everybody that reads this chapter, that interprets this chapter, that you know, that has given inspiration on this chapter, or not inspiration, but has written on this chapter, they 99%, I don't say 99, but the majority of them believe that this is Antiochus Epiphanes.
yeah, agreed. Yeah, I would say that's because I think it's pretty clear. Obviously, from my position, it is,
Yeah,
but
obviously,
pretty
yeah.
clear that it's Antiochus, because not only did the Jews believe that this fulfilled, it seems like although there is no affirmation by Jesus himself that this is true, but him seeming to observe Hanukkah gives even more weight to it. Because it seems like he at least acknowledged that feast day of Hanukkah in commemoration of this very event here that I'm talking about. But for how long is the vision? So let's read it without the word concerning.
Yeah.
Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one who spoke, "For how long is the vision, the regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot?" So it lumps all of it together at once. So they all need to be happening together, um, not just starting with the vision and then eventually coming down through the activity of the little horn later on down the line timeline. It is all lumped together as one, which is why he says the answer is for 2300 evenings and mornings. There's no clarification to, well, the whole vision is 2300, but then part of it is only going to be in temporary spots here and there throughout these 2300. It is just, it's all lumped together as one. And I think when I walk through the text about the indignation, about the transgressors, that makes it more clear in my opinion.
Yeah, I want to talk about the transgressors, but I'll just say one more thing on this. So the way that going back to my my example of the mechanic, remember when I started off, I said how much are the repairs concerning the brakes and the rotors, right?
So
He's gonna
not
just oh, go ahead.
real quick, sorry to interrupt you, but I have a birthday party to get to. I have like
Oh,
apparently like five. I'll give you the last word. You can like present what you want to present here, and then we'll probably just end it. I'll give
okay.
you the last word.
I'll just end it with this statement here, and then you could it's we've gone, but the way that I look at this is that if you think back to my mechanic um, who gave me the quote, and if I said, how much is the repairs concerning the tires and the brakes, or sorry, the brakes and the rotors, he's only going to quote me just the brakes and the rotors because of that word concerning. But if I were to say, how much are the repairs, the tires, the brakes, the rotors, the belt, the serpentine, everything, in his mind, he's going to say, okay, how much is the repairs, including everything else with the tires, the brakes, like the whole kit and caboodle. So when I see that word concerning removed from it, that's the way that I would interpret the context of the question. How long is the vision? Comma, the regular burnt offering, comma, the transgression that makes us desolate, and the giving over the sanctuary. How long is it all? And I think the question was asked this way so that when Daniel heard it, he understood that the activities of the little horn was inclusive of this vision. It wasn't a separate part of the vision. And I think that's why the angel worded it that way. I mean, that I could be wrong, but that's my interpretation of it. So I'm going to shut up and give you the
So,
last word, or if you want to pray, or whatever you want to do.
so as you were speaking, it actually reminded me of something I was going to say earlier in my previous points, and I totally just blanked on it.
Mhm.
So if you don't mind, I'll say that real quick, and
Sure.
then And
Yep.
something I did want to point out is that here in verse 14, it says the answer, and for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then, so after this is done, this
Right.
time length is done,
Yep.
then the sanctuary shall be restored to its rightful state. So in other words, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, the sanctuary has to be desolate, and then
Mhm.
it'll be restored, which is why I would say, when it says, for how long is the vision, the real burnt offering, all that is lumped together as one and starts together, not separate. That's what I wanted to say, and I totally
Got it.
forgot. So
Okay. Yep.
yeah, cool, awesome. So Tori, I definitely appreciate your time.
Yeah.
It's been a
We'll have to
pleasure.
do it again because
Yeah,
man, I didn't get to like a third of the stuff that I
there's a
that
lot.
I have. Yeah, so yeah, but I appreciate your time, brother. If you want to close with prayer and I'll let you
And
go.
yeah, and I would actually, maybe sometime, have you present your position on the daily, because it is different from the couple of positions in the SDA church right now.
Mhm.
I found it kind of fascinating. And then, if we have good conversations, maybe we can take it to other topics like the scapegoat doctrine
Oh,
or
would love it. Would
whatever.
love
So
it. Yes,
Sabbath,
yes, yes.
all kinds of topics we can get, because it seems like we have good symmetry, and
Mhm.
we're respectful and all that. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're easygoing guy. I appreciate you. You're not cantankerous or anything like that. So I don't do cantankerous conversations if, and hopefully I didn't come across at all. I get excited. So, but don't take my excitement as like I'm being rude or nasty or anything like that.
No, I'm very laid back. You're good. No worries.
Okay.
All right. Dear Lord, we thank you for this opportunity for Tori and I to talk about your word. And we ask that it bless those who listened and that your truth shines forth. I pray that you protect all of us here rest of this day and throughout our weeks, and be with our families as well. I pray all these things in your name. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. All right, my brother.
All
Take
right.
care.
You
We'll
too.
talk later on.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, everybody who listened, who tuned in and listened. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. May you guys have a good rest of your day. Grace and peace. God bless.